Franz had by degrees become accustomed to the Count's pallor, which had so forcibly struck him at their first meeting. He could not refrain from admiring the severe beauty of his features, the only defect, or rather the principal quality of which was the pallor. Truly, a Byronic hero. Franz could not, we will not say see him, but even think of him without imagining his stern head upon Manfred's shoulders, or beneath Lara's helmet. His forehead was marked with the line that indicates the constant presence of bitter thoughts, he had the fiery eyes that seem to penetrate to the very soul, and the haughty and disdainful upper lip that gives to the words it utters a peculiar character that impresses them on the minds of those to whom they are addressed. The Count was no longer young. He was at least 40, and yet it was easy to understand that he was formed to rule the young men with whom he associated at present. And, to complete his resemblance with the fantastic heroes of the English poet, the Count seemed to have the power of fascination. Albert was constantly expatiating on their good fortune in meeting such a man. Franz was less enthusiastic, but the Count exercised over him also the ascendancy a strong mind always acquires over a mind less domineering. He thought several times of the project the Count had of visiting Paris, and he had no doubt but that, with his eccentric character, his characteristic face, and his colossal fortune, he would produce a great effect there. And yet he did not wish to be at Paris when the Count was there. The evening passed as evenings mostly pass at Italian theaters, that is, not in listening to the music, but in paying visits and conversing. The Countess G. wished to revive the subject of the Count, but Franz announced he had something far newer to tell her, and, in spite of Albert's demonstrations of false modesty, he informed the Countess of the great event which had preoccupied them for the last 3 days. As similar intrigues are not uncommon in Italy, if we may credit travelers, the Countess did not manifest the least incredulity, but congratulated Albert on his success. They promised, upon separating, to meet at the Duke of Bracciano's ball, to which all Rome was invited. The heroine of the bouquet kept her word, she gave Albert no sign of her existence the morrow or the day after. At length Tuesday came, the last and most tumultuous day of the carnival. On Tuesday, the theaters open at 10 o'clock in the morning, as Lent begins after 8 at night. On Tuesday, all those who through want of money, time, or enthusiasm, have not been to see the carnival before, mingle in the gaiety, and contribute to the noise and excitement. From 2 o'clock till 5 Franz and Albert followed in the fete, exchanging handfuls of confetti with the other carriages and the pedestrians, who crowded amongst the horses' feet and the carriage wheels without a single accident, a single dispute, or a single fight. The fetes are veritable pleasure days to the Italians. The author of this history, who has resided 5 or 6 years in Italy, does not recollect to have ever seen a ceremony interrupted by one of those events so common in other countries. Albert was triumphant in his harlequin costume. A knot of rose-colored ribbons fell from his shoulder almost to the ground. In order that there might be no confusion, Franz wore his peasant's costume. As the day advanced, the tumult became greater. There was not on the pavement, in the carriages, at the windows, a single tongue that was silent, a single arm that did not move. It was a human storm, made up of a thunder of cries, and a hail of sweetmeats, flowers, eggs, oranges, and nosegays. At 3 o'clock the sound of fireworks, let off on the Piazza del Popolo and the Piazza di Venezia, heard with difficulty amid the din and confusion, announced that the races were about to begin. The races, like the Moccoli, are one of the episodes peculiar to the last days of the carnival. At the sound of the fireworks the carriages instantly broke ranks, and retired by the adjacent streets. All these evolutions are executed with an inconceivable address and marvelous rapidity, without the police interfering in the matter. The pedestrians ranged themselves against the walls, then the trampling of horses and the clashing of steel were heard. A detachment of carbineers, 15 abreast, galloped up the Corso in order to clear it for the Barberi. When the detachment arrived at the Piazza di Venezia, a second volley of fireworks was discharged, to announce that the street was clear. Almost instantly, in the midst of a tremendous and general outcry, 7 or 8 horses, excited by the shouts of 300,000 spectators, passed by like lightning. Then the castle of St. Angelo fired 3 cannon to indicate that number 3 had won. Immediately, without any other signal, the carriages moved on, flowing on towards the Corso, down all the streets, like torrents pent up for a while, which again flow into the parent river, and the immense stream again continued its course between its 2 granite banks. A new source of noise and movement was added to the crowd. The sellers of Moccoletti entered on the scene. The moccoli, or moccoletti, are candles which vary in size from the Pascal taper to the rushlight, and which give to each actor in the great final scene of the carnival 2 very serious problems to grapple with: first, how to keep his own moccoletto alight, and secondly, how to extinguish the moccoletti of others. The moccoletto is like life. Man has found but one means of transmitting it, and that one comes from God. But he has discovered 1,000 means of taking it away, and the devil has somewhat aided him. The moccoletto is kindled by approaching it to a light. But who can describe the 1,000 means of extinguishing the moccoletto? The gigantic bellows, the monstrous extinguishers, the superhuman fans. Everyone hastened to purchase moccoletti, Franz and Albert among the rest. The night was rapidly approaching, and already, at the cry of moccoletti, repeated by the shrill voices of 1,000 vendors, 2 or 3 stars began to burn among the crowd. It was a signal. At the end of 10 minutes 50,000 lights glittered, descending from the Palazzo di Venezia to the Piazza del Popolo, and mounting from the Piazza del Popolo to the Palazzo di Venezia. It seemed like the fate of jack-o'-lanterns. It is impossible to form any idea of it without having seen it. Suppose that all the stars had descended from the sky and mingled in a wild dance on the face of the earth, the whole accompanied by cries that were never heard in any other part of the world. The facchino follows the prince, the Transteveron the citizen, every one blowing, extinguishing, relighting. Had old Aeolus appeared at this moment, he would have been proclaimed king of the Moccoli, and Aquila the heir presumptive to the throne. This battle of folly and flame continued for 2 hours, the Corso was light as day, the features of the spectators on the 3rd and 4th stories were visible. Every 5 minutes Albert took out his watch, at length it pointed to 7. The two friends were in the Via dei Pontefici. Albert sprang out, bearing his macchiato in his hand. 2 or 3 masks strove to knock his macchiato out of his hand, but Albert, a first-rate pugilist, sent them rolling in the street, one after the other, and continued his course towards the church of San Giacomo. The steps were crowded with masks, who strove to snatch each other's torches. Franz followed Albert with his eyes, and saw him mount the first step. Instantly a mask, wearing the well-known costume of a peasant woman, snatched his macchiato from him without his offering any resistance. Franz was too far off to hear what they said, but, without doubt, nothing hostile passed, for he saw Albert disappear arm in arm with the peasant girl. He watched them pass through the crowd for some time, but at length he lost sight of them in the Via Macello.